You're listening to the Sanditon Chronicles, where we talk all things Sanditon and Sanditon adjacent. Come along with us as we dissect all of your favorite characters, scenes, and dialogue. We have so much to tell you.
Hey guys, welcome back to TSC. I'm Maureen.
And I'm Janice.
And we are back with another episode. We are doing a character spotlight. And depending on how this goes, we might be rolling in the character relationships to this as well, because I'm not sure how much we have really to talk about this particular character, whose name is Rowleigh Pryce. So we're going to break it into him. He's a new character in season 3, and we are excited to meet him. We have heard of him before. Now, he is one. Rowleigh Pryce was, that name was used for him in season 1, right? When Lady Denham was talking to Esther.
Yep. Her first love, her first crush.
Interesting that they remembered that name.
When not Lady Susan's last name.
Never letting it die. Never.
Yeah. It is really ironic. And because he's a character we never had seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd seen her in like 2 different scenes, 2 or 3. Well, more than, at least, anyway, several scenes.
Yeah.
And yet they didn't remember her name. So her last name. Yeah, at least they didn't change it for being Lady Susan. Yeah.
That's true.
So I just try and forget about the other thing they call her.
Well, we're going to talk about Rowleigh Pryce today, and he's got a couple relationships with people in town here, but we're going to really dig into this character. And I think I can see the attraction for Lady Denham for him. I can see why she feels that attraction for him. I can see what she's drawn to in him, because he has that very quick wit. I mean, he's an older gentleman, but his wit is so fast, it's so quick. But he's very stubborn in his ways, and he's very certain of what he wants and what he does not want.
He is, but it's amazing how she does get him to change his mind a few times. That was the most amazing part.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't that way with Tom.
No.
At all.
Mm-mm.
But yeah, and he this is the character that Lady Denham told Esther about,
mm-hmm.
and gave us sort of the first hint of how she could be soft.
Yes.
How Lady Denham could be soft.
Mm-hmm.
and vulnerable by opening herself up and telling that story. That it's not something we'd seen out of her before. She'd been rough and gruff and, self-righteous and all kinds of things. But so she gave us some vulnerability. That's hard to say.
It is.
And with him when she told that story. So it was interesting to have him come
mm-hmm.
and be in the story, have a physical person there.
Yeah.
In the 3rd season.
And I think we can probably directly tie his actions to Lady Denham when they were before she was Lady Denham. I think we can directly tie his response to the relationship to who she is now. I mean, that was her first lesson in marriage is not for love. Marriage is business. Marriage is furthering yourself in society. Marriage is climbing that ladder and getting more money and having a title. That's what marriage is for. Because he left her for, that was one of the things she said to Esther was she should have known, because I don't remember the other woman's name, but she had more money than Lady Denham did. And that was why he chose her. But this is the first time that we actually see how far the relationship went in season 3, because we're given to believe that, in at least my perception of the conversation Lady Denham had with Esther, I kind of assumed that it was broken off before it was really something, before it was announced to everyone, before the banns were read. That was my thought. I thought he left her high and dry, told her he loved her, told her he was going to marry her, but it wasn't like announced with the banns being read and everything. But in season 3, I got a different picture of that.
Yeah, because in the season 3, they tell us that he basically didn't show up at the church.
Yep.
Which is pretty serious stuff. It might have been more of an elopement, but but anyway, and her reasoning about him was she should have known it because he had all this debt.
Yep.
And so of course he would need to marry somebody with more money. now that she is older and has a little more perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of the reasons she was thrilled for Lord Babington to be caring for Esther.
Yeah.
And that
Absolutely.
he was interested in Esther. And of course, ultimately married her.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And I think that her not having children, obviously there's a more than one reason of why she might not have had kids. But I think the way she talks about people, the way she talks about her her husband who had died, the way she talks about them in such a cold, not unkind way. I don't think she talks about them unkind way, but the way she talks about feelings in their relationship, I kind of got the idea that because of what happened with Rowleigh, she decided, much like Charlotte, much like Georgiana, I'm not going to let someone do this to me again. I'm going to keep doing this. But she never lost that torch for him. So it was kind of nice to see that parallel between her feelings for Rowleigh played out in the younger girls who are struggling currently with these things.
Right.
But her advice was completely different until Rowleigh came back in the picture.
Right. Well, also, it was, I'm sure you get the impression that both of her husbands were significantly older than she was. And so she literally married them for their money, I would say, in both situations. And so she is set up from a financial standpoint. But here comes this man back into her life that she didn't expect and that is her age, albeit both of them being older. They're the same age. And he treats her so much better than anyone had in recent time.
He challenges her. And that's one of the things I liked about Rowleigh was the way he challenged her wit, but he also challenged her in every other area of her life. I mean, when they were sitting together at the dinner and anytime they had interactions before she agreed to be married to him, he knew what he did, obviously. He knew how far the relationship went before. He knew what he did and when he chose someone else. But it was almost like he acted like, yeah, but that didn't matter because that wasn't love. That was a business. So it didn't matter. So we're going to move on like nothing happened. We're going to do this now.
Well, I think he was trying to twist the story so that he was the victim instead of her. But he finally does admit that he was the one at fault.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know we did talk about, and so we're just going to talk about Rowleigh Pryce. We have to talk about the relationship season. I don't think we can separate them really the way we normally do with relationships and spotlights. So we're going to kind of do a relationship dynamic and a spotlight at the same time here.
Right.
But the way he understood marriage to be when he was talking about Lady Denham, and I know we talked about this when we were doing the recaps, when he said to her about just, yeah, you're going to move in with me. Change whatever you want. My wife had great taste, but you'll change it to your own thing. So it shows that though he clearly still has genuine feelings for Lady Denham, he clearly still has carried this torch for her this whole time, because I don't think he'd be able to jump right back into it like that if he didn't have genuine affection for her.
Right.
But he still doesn't fully understand what it is, because in his marriages, yes, it was for money, but there was no love there. So he doesn't fully understand what marriage is without that. So he was just sort of dictating to this woman who he should know better. He should know better. That's not who she is. He
was reminded as time went by
yes.
about who she really was. And she obviously became even stronger after he left her at the altar, as it were. You know, that she was more protective of her heart, and, you know, which is, I mean, literally one of my most favorite scenes involving them is the one where they're at the Parker's house. I mean, she's at the Parker's house talking to Tom and Mary, and he's like, you have to wait and meet Mr. Pryce, you know, this investor. And he didn't say his name. And then he goes out, he says, oh, I believe that's him now. And he goes out to greet him. And he says, Mr. Pryce. And she says, Mr. Pryce? What's his name? And that's when Mary says, well, Rowleigh Pryce. And then she immediately starts looking for an escape. She's like, where's your servant's entrance? And she's running back and forth frantically, looking for a way out to avoid him. And it is just the funniest thing. she is so awesome at, I mean, the humor that comes out
Yes.
of Anthony Reed is just awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean,
And I love that scene where she finds the hallway, but as Tom and Rowleigh are coming this way, she's coming this way. And it's almost like they cross right next to each other without even seeing, well, she sees him, but he doesn't see her. And she's still all aflutter and all a panic, and they're that close.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's really, it's pretty awesome.
I love Mary's expression though when it's happening. Like, poor Mary has no idea what's going on.
Well, and even more than that, when she's retelling the story to Charlotte,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I mean, she says, "I've never seen a woman of her age move with such hilarity." You know, clarity, whatever it was.
Alacrity.
Anyway, that's it. It was awesome. It was just, you know, so good.
And you know, that is one of my favorite scenes because it makes me laugh every time I see it. It doesn't matter how many times I watch it, it makes me laugh every time. But one of my favorite scenes with them is after she leaves him at the altar and she's talking to him, because we've seen Lady Denham's vindictive side. We've seen her be petty. We've seen her rise above it. We've seen her be brutally honest. We've seen her be a little compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
And with Rowleigh, it's the way he walks in that room and what he does to her. He softens her and he humanizes her more than any other character has done.
Right.
And while Charlotte can get through to her, it doesn't humanize her fully. Rowleigh Pryce,
No.
because she loves him and because he actually genuinely cares for her, he humanizes her and he softens her. And when he asks her if it was payback, essentially, for leaving her at the altar,
right,
she just takes a deep, calming breath and then tells him that's not what it is. And how this is who she is now, and this is what she's going to fight for, and this is what's important to her.
And if all she did was spend all of her time being revengeful, then she wouldn't have time for anything else.
Yep, exactly.
You know, which makes it sound like she's always been on the victim of everything, which I don't believe for a minute. But
well, I think maybe before he left her at the altar, she might have been the victim. After that, she certainly made her own decisions.
Right. But it's not like she's gone through her whole life being the victim of everything, you know, but I mean, I think she genuinely, there were many other reasons why she decided not to show up. And it was kind of convenient that it turned out that way for her.
It was, yes.
But I don't think that she was going out of her way to make it that way. You know?
Yeah. And honestly, the way Rowleigh is, I almost think that it endeared her to him, or it endeared him to her a little bit more, because that was the spunk that he loves about her. That was the fire that he loves about her, where she is her own woman. That's why he wanted to be with her, because he's his own man. He's had the relationships with younger wives. He was a young man marrying a younger woman who had money. He's had all that. He wants someone now who is his match. And she can be his match in every way. Mentally and physically, she is his match right now. And I don't think he's had that before, based off of how he talked about his ex-wife. I don't think he's had someone like Lady Denham. I don't think
and
like that.
And he forgets for a minute how different she is.
Yeah.
When he just talks about, I mean, she catches him up when he talks about, you know, owning her. That was like, okay, I don't think so.
This will not end well for you, dude.
No. And so he had to really step back those words and say, well, I know I couldn't ever afford you. I didn't mean own, you know.
Yeah.
But that is what he said. Yeah, he had a lot of learning to do about who she was now. And what he could and couldn't get away with.
Yeah. And I mean, the fact of the matter is she outranked him now. And I think that he had to take a minute to come to terms with that she would be giving up way more to marry him than she would have before.
Thought of it as being, definitely.
But
he thought, well, it's no big deal. You're going to be Mrs. Rowleigh.
That should be reward enough. But they both had that idea about themselves, right? That, well, being connected to me should be enough for you.
Yeah.
But
he's just sure they're going to leave Sanditon, and she had not even thought of that. You can tell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Her reaction.
Because she has the bigger title, she has the bigger home, she has the more money. She's she has everything that he could offer and then some. So it wouldn't, in her head, it wouldn't make sense to give that up to downsize or to downgrade what she fought for and what she, I mean, yes, she married men who had money, but she, other than that, is a self-made woman. Like she has made herself into this image that she has become. And Rowleigh, I think in that moment when he talked to her about that, is the first moment he really fully realized the scope of who she had become. And that's why he decided, well, then I guess we better build those apartments because I'm going to need to come and see you all the time. And I thought that was
build a smaller hotel.
A hotel. Yeah.
The smaller hotel.
And I think that endeared me to Rowleigh more because even though he came to terms with the fact, okay, this isn't going to happen the way I want it, but I'm still going to have you in my life, however I can get you in my life. And that's really what we want to see in Jane Austen adaptations is we want to see love that is pure, love that is sacrificial, and love that is more about the other person than themselves.
That's genuine. Yeah.
And I think that Rowleigh proved that with her in that moment.
Right. And that whole line when he's so upset with Tom about backing out of doing the Grand Hotel because of what happened to Mary. And he goes to her and is complaining about that. And she's like, well, this doesn't bode well when he's talking. We're really criticizing a man for listening to his wife, which is really interesting when she shut that wife down earlier.
Yep, that's what
she was trying to get things, better for the town. Yeah. And then also when he has that conversation with Mary about, when Tom says, come and tell us where you think we should put the hotel. And she says on a hill. And then he did that typical of that age male thing of, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And then totally dismisses it the minute she's out of the room.
Yep. Just placated her.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we can't do that. Think of the trek was his comment, but.
Well, let's talk about him with Tom and Mary a little bit. His relationship with Tom. I mean, obviously Tom tried to be more bold with Rowleigh than he had been with investors in the past. Because I really do think he learned his lesson. And I don't think he wanted to capitulate to Rowleigh. I think he wanted to do Mary's idea. But I think like he feels a lot with Lady Denham, he didn't feel like he was in a position to do that unless Rowleigh himself thought it was a good idea, unless Rowleigh himself sanctioned it, because it was Rowleigh was the investor.
Right.
And so I think Tom felt that he was in a rock and a hard place of, well, I want to listen to my wife. I value my wife's opinion and her input. But my wife is not the one with the money, so I'm going to go this way. And that changed. So we see Rowleigh kind of soften Lady Denham's character, right? But we see him, again, alter Tom's character a little bit because Tom is going against his gut. He's going against what he wants to do what this guy does. And we see Tom get more frustrated throughout the season because he's listening to Rowleigh and not Mary.
Right. And when Rowleigh's talking about these new plans and how we'll get more money, fivefold or whatever exactly he says. And that's when you see Arthur stand up for Mary and he's still, his eyes get big and all that kind of stuff. And then later on, he decides that, well, we've got to he says this from the beginning, he has to have Lady Denham's approval. Then he goes to Lady Denham to get her to turn him down. And in fact, let me back up. Tom says to Rowleigh, well, we have to have Lady Denham's permission. And he says, I accept that challenge. And then he goes and talks to Lady Denham, who goes along with it. And then Tom talks to Lady Denham to try and get her to not agree. And she's doing quite the opposite. It is interesting at the beginning of the season when she is congratulating Tom for the job he's done in the town, and getting her, getting the town filled up. They've sold all the houses, the apartments and stuff, which is why they need a hotel in the first place. And so in spite of Rowleigh not liking the way things went and that it wasn't going to be this grand hotel he was envisioning after she says, I'm not going to marry you, he gets real practical about, well, I need somewhere to stay when I come visit you. So when I was watching this stuff, these episodes earlier again, I'm thinking to myself, so where was he staying while he was in town this time?
I wondered that too.
It wasn't obviously with the Parkers, because he arrives at their house
frequently. Yeah.
So where was he staying? Anyway.
I mean, the same question with the Montroses. I mean, where were they staying?
And it could be they both rented, apartments, because they must have had, that was very common for the apartments to be rented out. It's just his seemed a little more short term. So that's probably where they both were renting apartments. Just, the difference with Georgiana is she bought one.
Yeah. And I think too that I think it was more about preparing for the influx of people that were going to come, because they could see that other things had been maybe not fully rented up, but rented almost to capacity. So there were a few options, but they knew they couldn't accept many more people in. So they wanted to build something so they could continue to bring more money in.
Right. Yeah. And more short term, as opposed to people who are going to stay there for the whole season.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with Tom, I liked watching that dynamic between Rowleigh and Tom and Mary play out. I think it was interesting to see how, Rowleigh's instinct, he didn't even hesitate when he played Kate and Mary. He acted in, at first, the first time I ever saw that, I was like, oh, he's going to be nice about this, because he was so like, the moment she started talking, and even the look on Mary, that's what made me so sad, was the look on Mary's face when he was like saying, oh, that's a great idea. She looked so pleased and so proud and so happy. And there was no hesitation for him to play act that, just as much as there was zero hesitation to immediately say, are you dumb? We're not doing that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Not to her face, mind you, but to her husband. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And I think that Lady Denham is the reason that he became practical, because you could see his view of women in that, well, they might have ideas, but they clearly don't know as much about the world as we do. And they don't know everything that we know. So we just had to pat them on the back and send them on their way and make the decisions that big men make.
Yeah.
But Lady Denham coming through and recognizing that Mary did have Mary was right. And for Lady Denham to say what she said to Rowleigh, that's what made him see it in a different light. And
right or wrong, the fact that she spoke up, and now you want me to marry you and you won't listen to a woman?
Yeah.
Or a man can't change his mind based on his wife's advice. So that means you're not going to change anything if I give you advice. I mean, I was thinking the same thing she was. I don't think so. It's, So, but it's amazing how many times he changed his tune after she challenged it. And then it was also really wonderful when Tom stood up to him.
Yep.
That he ended up having to come back and say, okay, we'll go with your original plan. His motivation, of course, was to see Lady Denham. And that is really what he originally asked him to do, was to invest in the smaller hotel.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what he asked him for. But he wanted to make more money. It was the money aspect. And I think too, recognizing that Lady Denham has a bit more than he does and more standing made him okay with, well, I guess I don't need to make that much more money.
Right. Right. And he would continue to, come and visit, but not, but who knows down the road what happens.
But you see Tom have these cycles in every season that we have been given of Sanditon, where it's this person who has more wealth, has more standing, is more I don't want to say notorious, but
more famous.
And he alters himself to capitulate to them, and he won't go with this guy. So Tom's gut is actually very instinctive, and it's good, and he has good ideas, but he is so afraid to speak up to the people who have the money. He puts himself in bondage to them, because you can see when he stood up to Colonel Lennox, he won. When he stood up to anybody in any of the seasons, he won. When he stood up to Rowleigh Pryce, I think Rowleigh Pryce for the first time really respected him. I don't think Rowleigh Pryce respected him before, because Rowleigh would bulldoze through everything Tom said, because I don't think he respected him until Tom. Yeah, he didn't like it. Yes, he was angry. Yes, he thought, oh, it's stupid that this is coming from your wife. But when Tom stood up to him, I think he garnered some of Rowleigh's respect, because that's what Rowleigh looks for in a business partner. That's what Rowleigh looks for to listen to. That's why he respects Lady Denham so much, because she speaks her mind and she says what she needs to say without fear, without cowing to him. And I think that Rowleigh doesn't need or want the deference that other people give him because of his money. He wants people to be bold, whether they're wrong or right. I think he respects people who are bold.
Yeah, it's certainly all of his blusteriness kind of fades away when somebody actually stands up to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good character. I think that he knows how to pinpoint weakness in people, and he knows how to see through people. And if he can tell that he can get his way with you, then why wouldn't he just try to get his way with you?
And he's obviously used to having the money and the control and bulldozing people. But because of his relationship with her, he backed off. And it is very interesting. I think the conclusion that they came to in that relationship, where she's going to stay there, he's going to come visit her every 3 months, going to stay in the new hotel they're building, was a great resolution.
And it's way more realistic.
Yeah. Yeah. Because she didn't want to leave Sanditon,
no.
And he didn't want to be there all the time. He had other businesses to take care of.
I don't think he ever really wanted to be back there.
Well, I'm sure but he liked the idea of this building he was helping with.
Yeah. You know. And I think if it would have ended any other way, it would not have been true to this character in Lady Denham that they had built up over the last 3-4 years.
Right.
There's no way that she would be willing to give all that up for Rowleigh, no matter how she felt about him. That's just not who she is. And it may have been what she was once before. And that's the other thing, is that when he first started talking about his wife to her, I was like yelling at my screen, do you not know her at all? Like, what are you doing? This is going to backfire. He had to relearn who she was, because who she is now is not the same. What is her first name? I can't remember what Lady Denham's. What's her first name? Louisa.
Thank you. Brereton.
Right? Louisa Brereton, right? That's what her name is?
I think so.
She is not that same person. She is no longer Louisa. She is now Lady Denham. She's a completely different entity than the one he had. And it took me watching it a couple times to realize, okay, wait, I can't fault him for acting this way, because this likely was who she was when he met her, when they were going to get married.
Right.
Since then that she has made herself into something else entirely. And for Rowleigh Pryce to roll with that shows a goodness and character of him as well. And even with Tom, when that's a lot due to Lady Denham, but even with Tom, that end result there, he was able to roll with that. He was able to dig into, okay, you're right, we'll do it your way. And how many wealthy men who have that station are willing to listen to the lower people?
Well, the most successful ones do, but you're right.
Yes, but it's not the norm.
No, at least it's not. I mean, I haven't known that many wealthy men of that kind of wealth, but the ones I know that have, are very well off and have built their own business, learn to listen.
Yeah. And I think that might be why Rowleigh is so successful, because he's done this. I mean, if we see him do it here, I think we can safely assume he's done it in all of his other business ventures and all of his other investments, because I don't think it's fair to say the only reason he did this is because of Lady Denham. I don't think that's fair to say about him. Of course, we aren't given a whole lot with Rowleigh. All we know of him is seen through Lady Denham's eyes for the most part. But I don't think it's fair to assume that. I think that it's better to assume that this is how he operates, because we see him set in his ways. We see that he wants what he wants, and he says what he says, and he does what he wants to do. So I think that this is a pattern of behavior for him, that he comes in strong and he comes in with, okay, no, this is the plan. I have the money. We're going to do this. And when people are bold enough and they talk back, and he respects them, and he either compromises or says, you know what, you're right, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And I think that we can safely say that that's who his character is, and that's what he's like in reality.
Right. Yeah. No, I think you're entirely right. I mean, he turns out to be more reasonable than you think he's going to be at first.
Yeah.
At first you're like, who is this bozo?
Yep.
You know, when he comes to a sea town, a spa town, and doesn't want to walk on the beach.
That was
Doesn't
so
want
funny
the
to me.
sand. Yeah. Yeah. It was,
He's a
and
little bit
then
of a
his
dandy.
big complaint when she isn't there, when she escapes, because she doesn't, Mary covers for her.
Mm-hmm.
His big complaint is that he missed his nap. This is when I usually take a nap. Then when Tom talks him into coming to the party, the birthday party, no, the celebration party is not a birthday party, for which is it? Anyway, when talks him into coming to the party for Georgiana
that
they're
birthday.
invited to. Okay, it was the birthday one?
I think it was.
Okay. His statement is, well, don't ask me to dance. I'm not going to dance. I can stay for a little while, And then, of course, what do? See them dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it must be the first one.
And the irony that he's complaining to Lady Denham, I keep wanting to call her Annie. He's complaining to Lady Denham about how Tom is listening to his wife, and he's changing his mind because of his wife. He listens to his wife too much. Well, he's there venting to his betrothed. He's looking for something from Lady Denham. He's looking for something from her in the same way that Tom received something from Mary.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, look at yourself a little.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that shows that part of him is done with the marriage business, and he would like to have an actual relationship that is it's with a companion, and it's with someone who is on your same level, because he's nearing the end of his life. As he said, he would like to spend the rest of his time with someone who he actually cares about, someone who can actually challenge him, and who's not just going to let him wither off into old age, but who's going to challenge him at every step still, no matter what age they are, no matter how close they are to anything. That's going to continue to challenge him, and he found that in them. And I think he found it in Sanditon in general.
Right. Yeah, especially when somebody did finally stand up to him. And it's interesting what he ran into in that town. And I was just thinking about the scene, where he wants to take her for a buggy ride, and she's like, I don't think so, And eventually she accepts him. And again, the same thing with the marriage. Eventually she accepts him. But then when he's leaving to take Mr. Parker, he and Tom are going to talk to an investor. He says, I'm taking our carriage. And she's like, our carriage? This is before they're married, Well, everything that's yours is mine, everything that's mine is yours, He had no trouble taking her stuff to use it.
Yep.
So yeah, he was pretty presumptive about that stuff instead of just asking. I'd like to use the carriage. Is that all right with you? He doesn't do that.
Just because you have found this person who you were going to marry before, because you found this person who you love and who loves you, doesn't mean that you get to jump right into taking over their life.
Right.
It was nice to see that end result with Edward too. When Edward announces that his aunt's not coming, and he goes there to say what he says, that Edward is kind. Obviously it's embarrassing for Rowleigh that she didn't show up, because the church is filled with people. Now, we don't know the circumstances around their first marriage or first engagement. We don't know if it was the same type of wedding, if it was an elopement. I'm not sure. We're given an idea, but nothing explicit is ever said fully about how that played out. But in this instance, we can clearly see that church is full of the townspeople.
Right.
People are there. People are waiting. So yes, he's embarrassed, but I just liked seeing how, and this is more of an Edward thing than a Rowleigh thing, I understand it, but I like how watching Edward deliver the news so kindly. It was bad news. No matter how you shook it, it was bad news. And he delivered it kindly. And Rowleigh did not lash out at him in the way I thought he was going to. I thought Rowleigh was going to rip him up and down in front of people because he was embarrassed and he was angry.
Well, Reverend Hankins is the one who yelled at him. you'd caused this.
Yep.
And no, he did not. Quite the opposite.
And that was Reverend Hankins taking out on Edward that he thinks Reverend Hankins felt like a failure. So he took it out on Edward that he had failed.
Right. Well, and the other thing that happened was that Edward finally, he actually did a great job. Mm-hmm. He was willing to give the message when the other two older gentlemen are just like at a loss for words. What do we say? What do we do?
Mm-hmm.
And he just went forward and did it. So yeah, there was all kinds of growth in Edward, albeit not in one direction and one straight line, but
that was also due to a woman, but we'll discuss them later in the season. Can't wait to get to them because I have things to say about those two. So can you think of anything else that we really can talk about with Rowleigh? We weren't given a lot with him.
No, I mean, the other things I think of when he made the comment about he decided to go when she said she was going, he decided to go to the shooting party, and they went together. And that's when she said, no, we're going to take my carriage. And it was only after they had been together that she said that she was willing to go on his red carriage, not carriage. What would I say?
Buggy.
Yeah. Didn't they call it a buggy? Anyway. Mm-hmm. And also, when they started dancing and just really got along, and then when they went to the concert, just the scenes we had of them together enjoying each other's company was fun and really built the relationship in the show.
It did, because he made her smile.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen Lady Denham. As I look back over the 3 seasons, I'm trying to think of when we actually saw her genuinely happy, and I don't think we've gotten a genuinely happy Lady Denham until season 3. We've gotten her pleased with events. We've gotten her pleased with things that are happening, but not genuinely happy as a general countenance. We see that in season 3.
Yeah, I agree completely, because in season 1, she's very grumpy about Edward and the investment. She's mad at Tom, and that only gets worse when the town burns. And then in season 2, and then how she treats Charlotte and Georgiana and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then in season 2, things are going a little bit better, but she's still worried about how the investment that Sydney's widow has in the town. And then what Edward does to Esther is just awful. And, so yeah, this is the first time you see her being able to really enjoy herself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's Edward, but I think she sort of delights in torturing him after everything he did to her. So I don't think that that's really a trial for her to torture Edward in the way that she's doing it in season 3. But beyond that, there isn't really any large scale family drama that she feels she has to deal with. Rowleigh lets her be carefree.
The only thing is when Edward leaves and elopes or tries to elope with Augusta, that's her big family drama.
But that's near the end of the season, so we get to see her in the beginning of the season up until that point relatively carefree, and
that was resolved fairly quickly.
It was by Edward,
but it's also the only time in all 3 seasons where she got personal attention from anyone.
It is, and not just, hey, I want something from you.
Right.
Because what Rowleigh was suggesting was mutually beneficial. It was a genuine give and take rather than, I want your money, so I'm going to kiss your butt and do whatever you say, however you say it. It was more than that. It was relational. It was really companionship is what he was offering her. And I think that ever since him in the first go round, that's what she has been desiring but afraid to give herself into.
And he's very complimentary about her dancing. And then he sends her those thistles, she first was offended about, and then was really laughed at. She saw the humor in it.
Yes.
It reminded me of you when you're so prickly, those were those were wonderful scenes, and it was nice to see Lady Denham have a nice relationship.
Yeah. And
even at the end, well, maybe we want to talk about that later, because I'm
talking about now.
At the end, when she agrees to support the old town being put in better shape and the building of a school, she sort of comes full circle.
Yeah. I think she sees what her position is in the town. I think she sees how much she is needed and that she can do more. And I think that's because she's had to be more self-reflective. Where, yes, Charlotte did cause her to look at some things in season 1 when she challenged her, when Georgiana challenged her in season 2. She had to look at some of her aspects, but Rowleigh forced her to truly look at herself and evaluate it.
And what she herself wanted.
Exactly.
For herself, I mean.
And who she wanted, the kind of woman she wanted to be, the kind of beneficiary that she wanted to be. And I think that he brought that out to her. And even with the flower situation, that what I loved about that scene more than that it made me laugh was he likes that about her. If anybody else would have said that, it would have been insulting. Oh, you're prickly. He likes that this is who she is. So for Lady Denham to have someone to truly just like her as she is, just because that's who she is, rather than what they can get from her, had to feel like such a relief. I mean, she's girded herself up with that for years by herself.
You can just imagine that his first wife was, a stay-at-home person. Yes, she took care of the home, but she was not, she wasn't a business person at all. And Lady Denham is a business person.
Yes.
I mean, she's had to be, but she is too, and she obviously likes it.
And of course, this is an assumption on our parts, given what very little we're given about his ex. Or I keep saying ex. He's not wife. He has his first wife. They aren't exes; they're just dead. But what little we're given about her, she was one who was the typical societal wife.
Right.
Lady Denham has an opinion, and she's forceful about it, and she's not shy about it, and she's bold with it. But he had spent decades with women who were not that. Who married him, and he got their money, and he became man of the house, and they became the subservient wife. And Lady Denham would not be that. And I think that's another reason she said no, is because she didn't want to. I mean, she said that she didn't want to give up her independence.
Right.
That's not who she is. And I think that endeared him to her even more.
And can you blame her?
Exactly. She fought for it. There's a lot about Rowleigh's character that we had to kind of dig deep and make assumptions based on what they gave us, based on the little nuggets of information that were passed on verbally, based on what we saw and him reacting to people. So we did have to take some what is it called? Artistic license. Yes. We had to take some artistic license with our thoughts on these, but I think they're pretty solid. I think they are based off of what we know of the writers and their track record and what we know of this character. And unfortunately, there's just really those two relationships that he had. Yes, he had a little tiny one with Mary, but a lot of that wasn't with them on the same screen together. It was Mary fighting one side and him fighting another, but not a whole lot fighting together. So there's not a whole lot more we can talk about with Rowleigh. Let us know in the comments if you agree with what we said, if you disagree, if you thought something different. We want to know. So let us know in the comments, whether you're watching this on a podcast channel or on YouTube, which reminds me, do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Completely free to do that. It just helps us to get our listener base up higher so that we can get interviews when we can start interviewing people again. So make sure you're subscribing. If you have friends who are into Sanditon, share it with them, have them subscribe. We have a goal of 1,000 right now, and we're at about 753, I think. So we need some more listeners there. So make sure you're subscribing. If you have not become a member yet, go ahead and sign up on our YouTube page. You can do it for $3 a month and come and chat with us, come and talk with us, and we'll get that done for you. Also check out our socials. And again, we really want to hear from you, what you want to hear. We're coming up to the end of our characters. Next week, we're talking about Mrs. Wheatley and her relationships. It's going to be the same format as this episode. We're talking about it all in one jump. Feel free to email us at our email address. Listen to the end of this for that. And that's what we've got for you today. So we'll be seeing you real soon. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Are you craving more TSC content? Head on over to our social media accounts. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and our Facebook group, the Sanditon Chronicles Sanditon Family Fan Club. Also, check out our website, thesanditonchronicles.com. Of course, we want to hear from you. We want to know what you want to hear and what your thoughts are. Email us at the.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tune in every week for new episodes.